get to politics in a second, but
Yes.
didn't you feel... I actually felt a real kind of surge of positivity when I heard the news about Princess Kate in remission. Just before Christmas, she was looking smiling and looking more healthy, and you hoped, but you didn't want to hope too much. It's like great news and so great to see the pictures of her with cancer patients at the Royal Marsden. What a kind of boost that is.
Terrific. And terrific for those patients to see her, because she's been through it, she knows what they're going through. And the Royals have always been almost notoriously private about their health. They don't talk about it, they never have done. That's from the Queen onwards. So I think it's really important what she did yesterday.
Private about their health. She thanked the NHS.
She did. She did. And the Royal Marsden is a fantastic hospital.
Brilliant.
It has had a fantastic reputation for years. And
World
it's
leader.
the NHS at its best.
Yeah, when she spoke of relief, that would have struck a chord with everybody who's had it, or you've had a family member who has it, because you do just feel this overwhelming relief. And I've watched like you've watched. And, you know, she's a member of the royal family, but she's a young woman.
She's a young mum.
She's a mother,
She is.
and she's a wife, and she's a daughter, and a
those
sister.
conversations she's had to have with her children, which lots of mums and dads have had to have with children about cancer. And I thought it was, very moving. Very
I think Kevin's softening. I mean, you know...
No, like, well, I see, I'm not still a Republican, but you see a young woman, you see a person, and you just feel empathy straight away. I don't want to rain on this, but we've not heard that her father-in-law is in remission, have we?
No.
He's not.
I don't think he's... I mean, the language before Christmas was about them continuing to manage the condition. Yeah. And as a, it felt like a medium-term plan.
Yeah.
Shall we have a listen to what the Princess said yesterday? Because I think, when we talk about you softening, Kevin, the royals used to be very remote.
Yeah.
And any discussion of cancer used to be off the table, not just for the royals. I mean, anyone who's watched The Crown will remember when the king, the Queen, the late Queen's father had cancer. It was kept very, very, very secret, private.
Pretty much kept from him.
But Princess of Wales has been so open about it. That means she becomes very relatable.
Yeah.
Charities say that transparency, that openness is inspiring. It enables people to talk. It enables people to think, I should go and get treatment. Because if I go and investigate this lump or this symptom, then perhaps I will also be in remission down the road. It's tough, really tough, particularly for the children and family members.
Absolutely.
Because, I think sometimes... Obviously, all the support needs to go to the patient. But sometimes the family around really suffer.
Those conversations they must have had with the children, who were just children. They may be princes and princesses, but they're just children, little children, who were worrying that they may lose their mummy. And she has got a great gift, hasn't she?
Yeah.
For communication. She is so natural. And they're never going to forget that experience, those people in that hospital, but it's the wider message she's given about cancer.
She says to cancer patients, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, the Sun this morning has got an enormous amount of detail about the conversations that she had yesterday with patients. She was hugging one mum whose daughter is in the intensive care unit, and Kate said, I wish I could do more. It will get better. There is light at the end of the tunnel. Best of luck. You're in the best hands. Yeah. And she knows better than anyone because she received treatment at the same hospital.
Yeah, there will be hundreds of people today, possibly thousands, who will be told they got cancer. Yeah. And they will hear that word and it will fill them with utter dread and fear. And some will be parents, some will have kids, others won't. But it is survivable now. And early diagnosis, absolutely crucial, but it is survivable. In a way, it wasn't 20, 30 years ago. But to see somebody, very high profile, who's had cancer, and they're in remission, they've come out the other end, she's seen the light of the tunnel, she's, walked into that light, that encourages people. Yeah. And it'll give, because they'll feel...
I don't know about you. This is quite personal, I suppose. But there is sometimes a reluctance to even check for symptoms. When Sarah...
We've had those conversations about screening.
Exactly, about mammograms.
That's right.
So when Sarah Ferguson announced that she had been receiving treatment, and she talked about having mammograms. Go for your mammogram. I thought to myself, I need to go. It's really important.
Yeah.
Because for some reason, and I don't know what little psychological tick there is, but you sort of think, if I don't think about it, nothing bad's going to happen to me. As soon as I start thinking about it, then I open up the possibility something's wrong. I went for my mammogram, thanks to Sarah Ferguson. All clear, absolutely fine. But it's very strange, and I know that men are more guilty than anyone of not going to the doctor, not checking for symptoms.
Yeah, men
what
don't
we're really good at doing
men don't
is
like
making
talking about
excuses.
it. Yeah.
And actually thinking, I had an issue in my constituency where they moved the breast cancer screening kind of unit. It was going to be a bus ride away. And you knew huge numbers of people wouldn't go. And it wouldn't be because they didn't want to go, but actually they were worried about it and if I had to get a bus. And making screening close, easy, simple, straightforward makes such a difference, because if it's hard, then people just think, well, actually, do I really need to? Do I want to think about it? So
it's
so
the attitude, look away, you hope it goes away.
Exactly.
And it's the dread of finding out something's
That's
happened.
It's the dread of finding something.
Yeah.
But of course, if you find it early, you're much more likely to be able to get it treated. So go and get checked.
Yeah.
And the Princess of Wales talking to patients, praising the NHS for their incredible treatment at the Royal Marsden is so important for having that conversation.
And she's becoming a patron there too, which is great, with William as well. Fantastic.
There's something you said, Andrew, though, about her.
Yeah.
This generation, there is an authenticity.
Yes.
She's real. It's not sort of staged. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't addressing. It was just her having conversations in a very real way with people in a similar situation to her. Very, very powerful way to do it.
She's just got this great gift, and she puts people at ease, and she talks naturally. Don't forget, she's not from royal stock either. She's a middle-class girl from a much more ordinary background, and it shines through.
Who would have been her mother-in-law, Diana? Was like that too. But you can see that
she was rarely given the chance to speak like that,
because it was a different era. That's right.
Yeah.
It was only after a divorce you really saw her when she was.
Well, and the way Diana did communicate with people rather irritated the senior royals, because they thought that's not the way you should do it. But it was the way you should do it.
But a hubby, William, can communicate much better than his father, Charles. They've gone a long way in a generation, and actually Harry can communicate.
But don't you think that Charles now communicates in a different way? The King communicates in a different way because he's learned some stuff from William and Kate.
He's better.
Yeah, actually, he hugs people all the time. You never saw the Queen hug.
Because he's been to a cancer.
I've got the same with my dad. After Strictly, I started hugging him. It took him months to get used to it.
Really?
I hadn't done it ever.
I always hug my dad.
Yeah. I love it. I love
that generation, they're not used to it.
No,
I did it to my dad. He said, "What are you doing?"
Exactly.
What are you doing?
Exactly.
What are you doing? Yeah.
Still lovely, though. Right, you mentioned Prince Harry. The Mirror today reporting that he is going to travel here to the UK. He's coming to London to attend his forthcoming High Court trial against News Group newspapers. And he is going to be granted protection from the Metropolitan Police while attending the hearings.
Some protection.
Now, I thought there was a big row over the fact he wasn't going to get protection.
It wasn't the row whether he has automatic police protection every time they come, or whether they do an intelligence assessment and think where he's going.
But it's also the level of protection. The full protection, the same as other royal family members, or is it? Does the risk assessment mean? I think the Mirror's reporting he's getting a lighter touch protection.
Yeah, but they will right. You will know he's going to the High Court on a certain day, probably at a certain time. There's really only one way in and out of the High Court, so you'll know anyone who was malevolent or just over enthusiastic might be there. So of course he'd have protection, but there's that wider discussion. Should he just automatically get the same, gun cop?
Because he's not a royal anymore.
No,
effectively. Well, he's a royal, but he's not a working royal.
Yeah, but I imagine he's still a target.
Yeah, sure he is.
Yeah, but if he comes in quietly, no one will know. So he's not a target.
It's risk assessment.
Yes, that's
what
why.
they were like.
You think no one would notice if Prince Harry arrived?
Actually, he comes in quite occasionally, and it's only days later you see a picture of him on a plane.
He's not been back in the UK since
often.
September 2022.
No, we see him very rarely.
Prince Harry will be noticed if he wants to be noticed.
Yeah,
if he doesn't want to be noticed, quite possible to travel with that.
We haven't seen him because relationships have broken down with his family because of his appalling behaviour.
You get on the plane late, you get off the plane early.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Sorry, that's Meghan has not been back on UK soil since September 2022. Harry, of course, was at the coronation.
She's been
in
much missed, of course.
2023.
At the
Fleetingly
back. At the back. Behind Anne's hat.
Princess Anne's hat, that's right.
A lot of people think
very fast.
Meghan's got the common touch as well. You were praising the Princess of Wales, of course. You know, in the wake of the wildfires, Meghan went and, you know, hugged those first responders, people offering help as well. Sarah Vine, I think your colleague, had praised Meghan. Said herself in her column, this is a rather turn of events.
She did say that.
She also went to meet Grenfell families without any publicity, and they all said, yeah, she just mucked in the kitchen, helping feed people, and had nothing but praise for it. It's kind of, you know, there's been this big public row with them, there's big public separation, but it doesn't make them entirely bad people. You know, you've got to see them in the round. I know you're going to find that hard with them to see them in the round, but you have to see.
I'm not sure their documentaries help them in terms of being authentic and
No.
I'm afraid, you know, to me, it's jars.
Her next programme, of course, is one of those that's going to be delayed because of the wildfires. And now we understand the Oscars could, for the first time ever, be cancelled. The Oscars are at the beginning of March. And now, obviously, we're only mid-January. So what do you think would need to happen between now and March for the Oscars, with those red carpets, glamorous gowns, millions of pounds worth of jewellery, trinkets on display, celebrating with gongs? Is it going to look tone-deaf, tin-eared, when people have lost homes, lost everything, lost, you know, people have died?
And it's not just the Hollywood A-listers who've lost their homes. People have died in these places, and the fires are still raging. They've not put them out yet. I think it's inconceivable they'll go ahead at the moment.
Really?
But they go ahead every year with millions, probably tens of millions of Americans living in abject poverty. Huge numbers of homeless people, including in LA. Is it because all of a sudden it's their houses? Look, life has to go on. Now, I'm not saying I'm not a big fan of the Oscars, but life goes on. Well, they go on for ages and ages. I can't stand lovies.
Don't you think, though,
patting each other on the back?
It's a massive industry.
It is.
Hugely important to LA and California. And very important that it stays strong, very important for the whole city. If you leave it to the actors themselves to decide, very hard for them, because, you know, are they going to have their parties and their awards? Don't you think, though, if President Trump was to say, when he becomes president next week, we need this to carry on for America, for our economy. I think in Britain in 1940, in the Blitz, we didn't stop having events and
football went on. Football matches were played
because you carried on.
Raise morale.
So I think, you know, it's a test for President Trump. If Trump says you must do this for the economy and America, then they'll do
America first. And people like Daniel Craig will be hoping it happens because he's probably going to win his first Oscar. And they want the big ceremony, don't they?
Given most of the lovies didn't back Trump, in fact, opposed him and were on the side of Kamala Harris, he might see it as divine retribution from his vengeful God.
I know, but if he then makes them have their awards, and they're thinking, well, are we going to do it because Trump's telling us to? He'll enjoy the conflict.
If he tells them to do it, they won't have it then, will they?
He's also been hugely critical of the California governor, of the authorities in Los Angeles.
And the mayor in Los Angeles,
so
too.
Newsom saying it won't work. Right. As my daughter says, needle. Basically, Trump could needle them and, you know, they'd do it.
And enjoy it. Enjoy doing it.
Right. What is happening here? The Mail, of course, yesterday called the Chancellor and the Anti-Corruption Minister two lame ducks. One lame
duck's now gone.
Decided to put herself out of her own misery yesterday. Tulip Siddiq. This was a remarkable story where she is the minister battling corruption here, gets caught up and named in an investigation into corruption in Bangladesh, which is where her aunt was Prime Minister and was then toppled.
And she referred herself to the ministerial ethics advisor, who said she hadn't breached the ministerial code, but my God, that letter was devastating from him. He said how regrettable it was that she couldn't effectively say the source of the house she was living in, where had it come from. She'd signed it off on the land registry. What, she'd forgotten who owned that? It was owned by somebody connected to her mother's regime, and the Bangladesh government now is saying, was it pinched from the Bangladeshi states?
Do you think, I mean, interesting thing, do you think they've handled this well or badly?
Badly.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
You know, this
has gone on for a month.
is there to investigate.
Yeah.
They wait for the investigation. He says she's not broken the rules, but it wasn't handled well by her. She says, fair enough.
Or by the Prime Minister.
resign. Well, it's interesting. If you just sack people immediately before you actually know the facts, is that the right way to do things?
Right. There's anti-corruption, then there's anti-corruption alleged in Bangladesh.
Oh,
and you
anti-corruption,
yeah,
yes.
You can't, when you're tainted by the family, you can't.
I mean, do we
you
know?
can't do that job.
It was
You couldn't. No,
specific
it's
job
quite
she was
clear.
doing.
There's allegations in Bangladesh. Is the aunt, the former Prime Minister, was she corrupt?
Well, she's fled the country. She
was toppled, ousted.
And there are suggestions that, which they're still looking into, that there was a whole nuclear deal in Russia where Tulip just happened to be there when Vladimir Putin signed the deal with Iran. She just happened to be there as a tourist, just happened to be there, that this was a corrupt deal.
The independent advisor who has just concluded their report...
Cleared her.
Cleared her,
but there's a big but.
Said it was regrettable that Tulip Siddiq was not more alert to the potential reputational risks arising from her close family's association with Bangladesh.
So
now,
the
were
mistake was
those
to give her the job in the first place?
Yes.
Well,
She'd
were
never had
those
that job.
risks known? Was the reputation of her aunt and the regime in Bangladesh known when she was appointed as anti-corruption
Yes,
minister?
it was.
Because if it was, why was she appointed?
And if you, I was in the House yesterday, talked to a lot of Labour MPs. They said we simply can't know why he gave her that job in the first place.
So then it's a Sir Keir Starmer problem.
Judgment again.
I've written a piece in the New Statesman on this. It's slightly out of date now because she's quit. But the incredulous Labour MPs who couldn't believe she hadn't been sacked earlier said it's because she's part of the Camden group. She's a neighbour.
And by that, you mean that her constituency
next door
is in the same
next door
borough.
to Keir Starmer's constituency.
They're best mates.
Yep.
And somehow that makes them very politically close.
They got in they both got in 2015.
Clouded his judgment.
They're great mates, and I think another I mean, look how quickly he got the Transport Secretary. Lou Haig. She went in 24 hours.
Yep.
But this has taken a month.
Yeah, but in both cases, question mark, this is a question, because I'm not sure if I know the facts on Lou Haig. In both cases, they knew about this at the time the appointment was made. I mean, it's very hard to sack Tulip Siddiq for doing nothing after she'd been appointed to a job. If they knew there was a problem, she should never have been appointed.
She should never have.
What's the justification for sacking her? She didn't do anything different. Nothing changed.
One is the public spotlight magnified his error.
Right.
And I think in the end they could see it was an error. And questions kept being asked. I think they're legitimate questions. Some of them will be politically motivated in Bangladesh. She's protesting her innocence. She must be the first minister forced out to spend more time in properties linked to an aunt. When he says, the door will be open for you to come back. Which door? There seems to be lots of houses involved in this. All those questions will not go away.
So you think she can't be reappointed as a minister in 2 years' time?
I think it's going to be difficult, unless...
If she's worked out by then how she acquired this house that she lives in, which is worth £2.5 million, if she's worked out by then how she acquired it, perhaps she can. How can she not know, Ed?
Unless the ousted aunt who has fled the country can prove she's completely clean.
I think people will be, quite rightly, just completely befuddled by how we've lost a minister because of a corruption investigation in Bangladesh. But when that minister is the anti-corruption minister here, they might think that just seems self-evident.
And she's lived in two properties given to her by people associated with her aunt's regime.
But something much closer to home, two issues this morning. Actually, I was going to talk about something completely different, which is firstly, the Potholes, Lord Pothole, Mr. Pothole, says he's fed up with the government inaction on potholes. And we're going to do an interview with him in a few minutes. One of the reasons that he's going to stop campaigning to fill potholes after more than a decade is that the government just doesn't take this issue seriously, despite all the extra money that goes into... This is a very confusing picture. Why is he in a very heavy vehicle driving down a road which must damage the road surface?
He appears to be in a tank.
Yeah, it is astounding.
This is very, very odd.
All right.
Very odd.
That's an
Is that
interesting way to sort the
of why we
potholes
put
out.
more potholes?
Exactly.
And
That's bonkers. Right, let's be quite clear.
Yeah,
That is bonkers.
let's suggest that that's not the best vehicle to drive down the road
I don't
in.
know what was going on there.
The total cost of repairing vehicles damaged by potholes hit a record high last year.
And people can sue their local council over it,
Yes.
and it becomes very expensive for local councils, it becomes very expensive for people suing.
But at least it gets the pothole fixed.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
it's a legacy of years of cutting road maintenance.
Yeah.
Didn't the government
not
announce a
replacing-
30% increase in pothole maintenance in the budget?
Yeah, but why
in
aren't
fact,
they getting on with it?
Lou Hager's the Transport Secretary did, but it will take some time to get them all fixed because you've got to close parts of roads off. That creates disruption. You've got to have the people do it. You want it done properly.
Just get on
Somebody
with
just
it.
turns up with a load of tar macadam or whatever it is, and you pour it in the hole, flatten it. Well, the moment there's bad weather, water gets down the side, ice,
and they don't fix
just
them
breaks
properly.
it all up
It's the-
again.
with
and
the
off you
same-
go.
the
Local
same
government
pothole-
traffic highways experts, they're very, very pernickety about how to fill in potholes. I remember
Yeah.
it being very frustrating.
Yeah, and they don't seem to fix them properly because the same old pothole keeps coming
Well, if
back.
you do it on the cheap, it's going to come back. You need to do a
I
much
guess if
bigger
you drive around in a big orange tank, you'd have to worry about potholes because you could just go over them.
Kevin, Andrew, thanks very much indeed. We will see you later after we have spoken to Darren Jones. Now, he is the Chancellor's number 2 in the Treasury. My goodness, does he have some questions to
Certainly
answer
does.
this morning, particularly because inflation figures come out in a couple of minutes. That's the rate at which prices are rising. Also, huge concern this morning amongst people who receive disability benefits, PIP, independent benefits, and they're worried that the Treasury is going to target their benefits.
I
We'll
think they
find
are.
out from Darren Jones, and we'll talk to you about that interview afterwards.